Welcome to this Explainer. Okay, today we are exploring a totally wild cultural collision. We're looking at the fascinating intersection of football, high fashion, and global pop culture. We're going to map out an incredible journey together, looking at how a game historically rooted in working-class communities evolved into, well, a global runway, dictating trends and partnering with the biggest luxury houses on the planet.
So let's dive right into this by asking the big question. Why are footballers suddenly high-fashion icons? Like, how did a muddy, traditionally working-class sport turn its players into literally the most sought-after runway models in the world? Footballers aren't just trailing behind the fashion curve anymore. They are actively setting it. But to really understand this massive global luxury takeover, we actually have to trace the roots all the way back to the fans.
All right, part one, from terraces to runways. To get the full picture, we have to start with terrace style. Back in the 1980s, the casual subculture emerged, and listen, this wasn't just fashion for fashion's sake. Clothing became a kind of secret code in the spaces between the pub and the turnstile. Fans wore technical jackets, clean silhouettes, premium sportswear. Basically, what you wore communicated where you had traveled, who you stood with, and your deep understanding of football culture. It was subtle, it was practical, and it was incredibly influential. It really laid the groundwork for modern streetwear as we know it today.
Just look at how this timeline maps out. It's crazy. We evolve all the way from Umbro outfitting the FA Cup back in 1924, right up to modern global luxury dominance. A huge pivotal moment hits in the 1990s when sports and music just completely collide. Picture Oasis's Gallagher Brothers performing in Umbro drill tops at Main Road. That was the exact moment sportswear permanently crossed over into pop culture.
And this comparison beautifully illustrates a massive shift in the player archetype over the 20th century. Historically, you had the traditional, located player. Think of the 1930s icon Stanley Matthews, reflecting modest, local, working-class values. But by the 1960s, a totally new breed arrives, the superstar. George Best, dubbed the fifth Beatle, embodied this perfectly. He wasn't just an athlete, he was a full-blown celebrity and a commodity, which really signaled the dawn of the footballer as a true pop culture icon.
Moving into part two, the Premier League revolution. So, what was the actual turning point for the game? Well, it was a staggering £300 million TV deal with BSKB in 1992. $300 million! That massive influx of cash transformed English football into a global media market practically overnight. The Premier League was marketed as a whole new ballgame, and it brought with it a much slicker, far more commercialized presentation of the sport, suddenly putting these players under a global, high-definition spotlight. But, along with all that cash, came an absolute legal earthquake. The 1995 Bosman ruling created a free market for players across Europe. By lifting restrictions, players were suddenly untethered from their local roots and became true international stars. This unprecedented freedom of movement brought an influx of diverse, global styles directly into the locker room. Now, what's genuinely fascinating about this is how academic researchers actually track this exact shift. Studies highlight how the rise of the style-conscious, metrosexual player began to completely rewrite traditional white working-class masculinity within the sport. It opened the door for a much less rigid notion of masculinity, one that allowed for a lot more aesthetic playfulness and self-styling among the athletes.
And you literally cannot talk about this without mentioning David Beckham. He was absolutely pivotal here. He selectively embraced gendered fashion, like famously wearing a sarong, and he really tested those cultural boundaries. As this quote from GQ's Dylan Jones notes, Beckham's working-class roots combined with his sheer talent allowed him to bridge sport and high fashion in a way nobody else had ever done. His choices, even though they sometimes sparked critique at the time, really laid the groundwork for today's players to express themselves freely without feeling like they were threatening their sporting credibility.
Okay, let's jump to part three, the PSG and Jordan crossover.
Watch how this builds into the perfect domino effect. It's like a giant puzzle coming together, born out of this deep, mutual appreciation between megastars. It starts with David Beckham moving to Real Madrid and actually choosing the number 23. Why? Out of admiration for Michael Jordan. Years later, Brazilian superstar Neymar, another huge Jordan fan, becomes the first athlete to ever feature the Jumpman logo on a football boot. So when Neymar moves to Paris Saint-Germain, a club situated right in one of the fashion capitals of the world, the stage was perfectly set for the ultimate collaboration. PSG and Jordan teaming up for an exclusive Champions League kit in 2018. NBA star Jimmy Butler totally hit the nail on the head with this quote. It perfectly validates this unprecedented crossover.
What could have easily been seen as just a corporate PR stunt was instantly embraced as incredibly authentic. This collaboration ushered basketball directly into European football's VIP section. It was wild, and it proved, for sure, that football clubs could operate as global streetwear brands, releasing these lifestyle capsules that just instantly sell out to fans of both sports and fashion enthusiasts alike.
Which brings us to Part 4, redefining gender and style.
It's super important to contrast the historical constraints placed on women with the empowered landscape we see today. Unbelievably, back in 2004, the FIFA president actually suggested women should wear, get this, tighter shorts to promote the game. Compare that incredibly outdated mandate to today, where female athletes are actively driving an inclusive, highly lucrative fashion landscape. They are stepping far beyond those historical constraints and walking straight onto the covers of high fashion magazines.
I mean, just look at the sheer volume of brand interest in the English lionesses right now. We've got Leah Williamson fronting Nike's collaboration with London designer Martine Rose, Chloe Kelly starring in Calvin Klein campaigns, and Alessia Russo right on the cover of Elle UK. Digital agency and social media have allowed female players to build these incredible personal brands, directly challenging historical industry norms and becoming leading fashion influencers in their own right. It is a real game changer.
Finally, let's look ahead to Part 5, the 2026 luxury takeover.
Because luxury houses, they aren't just dabbling in streetwear anymore. They are directly engineering the identity of national teams. You've got Loewe outfitting the Spanish team, perfectly merging high craftsmanship with sports identity. Jacques Hermès and Nike are reframing the French team's apparel through this incredibly minimal, high-fashion runway lens. Meanwhile, brands like Kith are turning football heritage into highly collectible streetwear. The pitch is, quite literally, becoming a runway.
The modern jersey sits right at the absolute center of this whole shift. It moves effortlessly between the stadium, influencer feeds on social media, and high-fashion runways. What you really need to take away from this is that the aesthetic of football is now a universal language. It's being shaped collaboratively by the players' personal tastes, the creative direction of luxury houses, and the relentless, non-stop pace of digital culture.
So we've seen football fashion travel from the practical, community-driven terrace styles of the 1980s right up to the ultra-exclusive luxury collaborations we're seeing today. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep your eyes on the pitch and for sure keep them on the runway, but I'm going to leave you with this one final thought to ponder. As the game becomes increasingly hyper-commercialized and these jerseys start reaching high fashion price tags, what does the future uniform of the everyday working class fan actually look like?